we on? Yes. It's 7 o'clock. I'll call this meeting to order. Bailey, can you give us a roll call, please?
Councilmember Munson? Here. Councilmember Byström?
Present.
Councilmember Husnick?
Here.
Mayor Bain?
Here. If you're able, please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
A motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. We have open forum this evening. Our next item on the agenda. Anybody is welcome to speak during this portion of the meeting. I will say if you are here to speak specifically on behalf of the Everton Avenue variance appeal, we will entertain public comment at that portion. So if you want to, if that's why you're here, you're either welcome to speak at open forum or wait until after we have had staff presentation in that portion of the agenda. With that, first item, Ed Eigner. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. My name is Ed Eigner. At 21221 Everton Avenue North. And my reason for speaking this evening is I was able to watch your workshop when you streamed it. And I just wanted to comment on some of the things that you had mentioned. And I want to give kudos to the Council and especially Mr. Casey on laying out, I guess you're going to call it a strategic plan. And I really like the idea that you're going to take Public Works and get a Public Works Dave, promote him, because he's really proven himself. And I like the idea that you're going forward and splitting that up, and so it'll have more direction. I also really like the idea of changing your software program and get something, rather than patches, get something that's all-encompassing and that you can add to city bills and all the types of things, permits, the things citizens want and they want expedience on. And I really think that's the way to go. I just want to step up here and applaud you for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, Eric Langness.
Eric Langness, 9610 223rd Street North. Mayor and Council, I want to speak in regards to the agenda item about CloudX vapes and its application. On page 160 of the packet, it has their policies and it goes over disciplinary action, and it says below details the internal disciplinary actions for employees who failed to check for proper identification. And it says non-compliance found by management. The first incident is a written warning. The second incident is a 1-week suspension. The third incident is a 1-month suspension. And the fourth incident is grounds for termination. So even after the fourth illegal act, you're not guaranteed termination, and even upon the first, the second, and the third, you're not even facing termination. As somebody that literally has hired thousands of people in the last 5 years and writes policies and assists in those processes, this is like absurd. But to top it off and to just double down, they had to change their policy if you're caught by law enforcement. So if you're caught by management, you get 4 steps. But if you're caught by law enforcement, it goes on the next step in the policy that the first is a 1-week suspension. And then the second is grounds for termination. So at what point have they made the determination internally to say, we're going to treat your wrongful action differently based on who you're caught by? It says a lot about this applicant, amongst the many, many other concerns and policy that I have. And I'm not going to go through all their policies, and I'm not going to write one and say, here's a policy they should have. If they want to hire me for that, I'll consider an offer. But their policy is horrible, and I highly, highly encourage you to seek a reason from our city attorney to deny this application in any way possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Lindsay Savage. And if you want to speak on the variance appeal, you're welcome now, or if you want to wait until that portion of the agenda. I'll wait. Is it Barbara Mundus, same? I can wait. Perfect. And Martin Worthman?
I'm here for the 1183 property.
And you're welcome to speak now, or you can wait.
I'm willing to speak.
Perfect.
Thank you, Bill.
Very good. With that, we will close open forum and move on to our consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda or any changes that council may have.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as written.
I'll second.
Any discussion? With that, I would ask all those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Consent agenda carries. Next up on our agenda is item 7A, which is the 21-183 Everton Avenue variance appeal. Donovan, you're going to take us through this?
Sure.
And similar to what we did in our last council meeting, staff will present. I will entertain a motion and a second to open discussion. We will have council discussion at that point, and then once council has discussed and asked some initial questions of, all appropriate questions that they may have of staff, I will then open up public hearing. Go ahead, Donovan.
Thank you. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to present the appeal of the Planning Commission variance approval regarding 21183 Everton Avenue. It was for a detached garage location. The property is located in the south shore of Clear Lake, as shown here on your overhead on the video. And the application itself related to a garage for this property. The existing conditions are there's approximately 1,200 square foot single-story cabin and a metal shed, a canvas and pole structure, and 2 wooden sheds that are combined. This is from a 1994 survey. The application that was approved by the Planning Commission was to locate the detached accessory structure 20 feet from this front property line, shown here, as an attached garage. And with one of the accessory structures still remaining, the temporary canvas and pole to be removed, and the applicants also said they would remove the metal shed upon completion of the garage. Well, following that December 12th approval, 3 residents appealed this decision. They offered text and photos to back up the reasons why. One appellant who lives just to the east of the property has submitted these photos, which show the location of the sheds and other material on the far right there. Here's a little more detail of the shed, the wooden shed near the road. Here's the canvas and pole structure. There's the tin shed. And then continuing photos of, during a summer deluge, pictures of the excessive exterior storage, and continuing through the current condition of the property. This is and also showing that gray shed from another angle. The sheds are important, and they were a discussion, part of the discussion of the Planning Commission, because I'd noted in my staff memo that since 2005, this canvas and pole structure, as shown here, had been subject of some city zoning code enforcement. The the temporary structure had not been removed. And in 2016, the city received a complaint, a visit to the property, and which resulted in 3 misdemeanor citations. They were an excessively tall fence, a temporary pole structure, unlicensed vehicle, and excessive outdoor storage. I began to work with the owner, and that was reduced to the temporary pole encampment structure, which needs to be removed during the summer months, according to city code. And after further discussion with the owner, and with her disclosing that the shed, the cams and pole structure was there because it was to store materials for a future garage, which she understood needed a variance, I encouraged her to file for a variance. And so, my concern about the cams and pole structure is similar to the residents' concern. We want to get the property cleaned up. I saw this as an avenue, and so that's how the applicant did file for the variance. When the Plan Commission, in their discussion around the accessory structures, we informed them the staff informed them of what the zoning code allowed, and also we sought an opinion from the city attorney. And also submitted with your packet is a memo from Bridget that outlines the authority the Plan Commission's been granted involving variances. There's a whole set of decision criteria, and then also that any condition that's placed by the Plan Commission as a condition of approval must bear a rough proportionality to the impact created by the variance. In this case, it started off where it was a detached garage, and I said that, well, the shed must be, this gray shed must be reduced in size in order to comply with the ordinance as far as size of sheds. And then when it became an attached garage, that changed the situation, where there's no longer a impact based on a detached structure, but an attached, basically an expansion of the house. And that also, the city attorney's memo notes that because evidence we have before us showing that this is a legal non-conforming structure, that it precludes local governments from requiring the removal of a legally established non-conforming use as a condition for approval of a city application. And so in this case, on their decision on December 12th, it's my opinion that Planning Commission, did do what they're allowed to do, which was, review the evidence before them, set conditions that related to the construction of the attached garage. These conditions relate to no demolition or construction shall occur without proper permits, no drainage problems shall be resulting from it, and that sort of thing. And so the Plan Commission, used their criteria and, passed a variance with I believe the appropriate conditions. Before you, the city attorney has included 2 resolutions, and it's city council's within their authority to either uphold the Plan Commission's decision or overturn the Plan Commission's decision. And the resolutions there are to either take one of those 2 pathways, and I encourage you to, whichever pathway you take, that you do include reasons for for that decision. With this, I'd be happy to take any questions from the City Council.
And to clarify, I'm going to correct my previous statement, so we can do a quick question and answer session at this time with staff, and then I will open up public hearing, and we'll hold taking a council motion or second until after the public hearing. So any questions of staff before we open up public hearing?
I have one question that I'm a little bit muddy on here. First of all, in reading through all of this, it appears to me that Planning Commission really has done their due diligence and applied the legal criteria that, at least in what I've read. And it seems to me that their requirements, they're on the right track. The one question I have is about that wooden shed, the 160 square foot wooden shed. Is there a piece of that, is there an expansion that occurred to that shed?
Yeah, good question. It appears there was a slight expansion. That, from what I can tell, looks like from the 1994 survey, there were originally two structures. It appears that they were pushed together, and the owner will say that there actually is a wall within the two, within that larger, the 8 by 20 structure, and that there was some re-siding and re-roofing of it. There's some question regarding whether this was done with a permit or not. At this point, as of January 2015, the building code changed so that no permit would be required for a structure of this size. That's separate from the actual location of it, the non-conforming location. But based on everything else that was going on with the property, I did recommend when I pass this on to the police department for the actual misdemeanor ticketing, I did recommend that the shed be addressed. The officer went to the site, did not issue a citation for work without work on that shed, and essentially based on all the other things that were going on with the property, with the number of vehicles, the storage of materials, that the expansion of the shed, it looks like there was a kind of a porch added to it, as well as the siding. I took the opinion that there was, we could get compliance on everything else. This was not so significant, and even now, if that expansion was removed, I think the shed would really diminish its appearance. I don't think that would be in anyone's interest, since the appearance of the shed seems like that's a concern of the residents.
Mm-hmm. And that was one of my concerns as well. I'm also concerned about this history of noncompliance on this property.
Any other questions of staff? With that, I will open a public hearing. And we'll start first with those who had signed up for open forum. Lindsay Savage. Welcome. And if you please could state your name and address for the record.
Yeah. Good evening. My name is Lindsay Savage. I reside at 21186 Everton Avenue with my husband and son, directly across the street from the 21183 Everton property, requesting the variance to build a garage. I'm not here to say a property owner shouldn't desire a garage. I'm here with concerns to allow a building permit to be approved prior to construction starting. The Planning Commission has approved a variance already knowing there are temporary structures that do not comply with the city. One structure dating back to 2005, which was to be removed but is still there, and one that may or may not have been grandfathered in, but significant modifications have been made to it within the last 3 years without proper permits or city notification. I question the validity of grandfathership since it has been modified. The location and design of the new garage concerns me. It is desired by the property owner to be located on the west side of the property. This would completely obscure our view of the lake for our Lakeview property with deeded easement, decreasing our property value. Our easement is just west of the property line of the 21183. The design raises other concerns for appropriate drainage, so our easement isn't getting saturated by water runoff. The design also shows a 2-story structure, which the height of the building would contribute to obscuring our view of the lake, and does not seem compatible for a disabled person, and the house is only 1 story. The disability being a reason for the garage. The criminal history to this address has been well documented by Forest Lake PD, Washington County, and other federal agencies for over a decade. Some instances, including a shooting, a drive-by shooting, 2 raids, which included SWAT, DEA, U.S. Marshals, and local law enforcement, posing a safety hazard to our neighborhood. The property has actually been vacant for approximately 2 years, despite the Planning Commission being informed that it's been occupied. In closing, I'm asking the council to reconsider the Planning Commission's approval, a distinct design and location to be reviewed, and not to allow further construction without the property becoming compliant with the city. In my opinion, a garage is completely plausible on the east side of the property where a 2-stall driveway already exists if other structures are removed or relocated. This would increase everyone's home value. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Barbara Mundus. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Mundus. I live at 21091 Everton. And I try to make things as concise as I can according to everything that you've all put forth in the packet. Quite simply spoken, I guess I'm really confused about why someone is being rewarded for bad behavior. And that's what I see this as. I totally understand, and I've lived in large metro areas, and I totally understand the opportunity to try and help them get in compliance, and that, you know, the request for a permit was that opportunity. But it seems to me that there may be other ways that we can do that, you know. And when somebody still has what would be considered, I mean, I get it's a misdemeanor, but it still is a criminal case that's pending. That hasn't even been resolved. And we're talking about issuing a conditional or a variance. That just doesn't make sense to me. And I know that there's been a lot of talk. I've only lived on the street for 2 years. If anybody's been on our street, you know, it's a private street. It's quite eclectic. We have everything from very expensive, newer, modern homes to the original cabins. I personally, in the 2.5 years that we've lived there was no one living at this residence. I never saw anyone. I didn't know anything about the house until all of this kind of started happening, other than I just retired from 25 years in criminal justice. That's how I knew about the residence. So I would have known if someone was there. So I'm just really concerned that this is all based, like I said, we're rewarding bad behavior. I think there's other ways that we can help residents gain compliance. Thank you for your time.
Martin Worthman.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Martin Worthman. I live at 21167 Everton Avenue North, which is the property immediately to the east of the property under sorry, head cold. Immediately to the east of the property under question, with the exception of a 40-foot strip that runs directly between the two properties, which is an access strip for my neighbor across the road. I want to thank the other members who've come here and given their opinions of it. I've submitted my perspective as well as a lot of these images you see, and I apologize for the rotten photography, but anyway. For the most part, what I don't like about it is it's been this way for almost 25 years, almost a quarter of a century. I moved into my home in 1995, and it hasn't functionally changed ever since. It's been a mess. 1 year after I moved in there, the property owners were raided by a combination criminal enforcement group, ATF, FBI, DEA, state troopers, federal, local law enforcement. It's very disturbing when you see a dozen men in body armor carrying HK MP5 machine guns. The famous ones you always see, they're about that big. They fit under trench coats really well, and they go full automatic. They're extremely dangerous weapons. But they had a dozen of them coming onto that property. That is just, to my knowledge, the most serious criminal offense that's been undergone there. They found stolen property on there, in that gray Quonset hut shed. They've refused enforcement orders. They've refused cease and desist orders. And they've apparently also refused 3 misdemeanors. They're basically saying, you can take your rules and regulations and stuff it. They're going to do what they want to do, and to heck with the rest of us. At the last meeting, I detailed a spontaneous couple that came to my home about 10 years ago. They were really interested in my property. My property was not being listed. A realtor who knew that I was going to list the property sent them over. They were really impressed. They came in from the east side, they saw my house, they saw the lake view, blah, 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 okay? We walked out of my front door, turned to the east, got halfway past my garage, and they said, "Is that your property?" And I said, "No, that's just the 40-foot strip to the lake." No. What's beyond it? Is that your property with a Quonset hut? And I said, "No, that is not mine." "You have no control over that?" I said, "No." They turned around and walked away. Walked away. They didn't even bother to question me any further. Now, I don't know what they're going to offer me for my home, but I know 2 real good potential buyers who really like that house walked away upon seeing the Bartholds property. You combine that serious financial disruption, the disruption of some of my neighbors' view of the lake, the criminal history of it, and I particularly appreciate the woman who is working in criminal justice by saying, we're rewarding bad behavior. I've been a clinical psychologist since 1972. I can promise you, I recognize bad behavior when I see it, and I recognize it being rewarded. And in my field, what happens when you reward bad behavior is the rate of that behavior goes up in the future. It doesn't go down, it goes up. You tell your kids not to eat the cookies in the cookie jar, the kid eats the cookies in the cookie jar, and say, "Oh, Billy, you reached all the way up in the cabinet to get those cookies. How good of you." What's Billy going to do? Right back at the cookies. My written comments, I'm not going to go through them all. You can full well read them. But the last paragraph is, I think, the most important. I'm requesting that these variance violations on all 3 of those structures, the metal shed, the Quonset hut, and the out-of-compliance wooden shed that was built a couple of years ago, be completely removed, because all of those violate the laws, regulations, etc., that you folks in the Planning Commission and the Police Department have established everybody else has to follow. I've got to follow, my neighbors have to follow. Please insist that they meet the laws before they start building another potentially variant structure. They've promised all kinds of things, but they haven't delivered anything but trouble. Please, just have them remove those structures, and if they don't remove by the deadline, you accept it. Let's pick one, June 1st. If they're not removed by June 1st, please authorize the city department to go in there, demolish those sheds, level it out, charge the property owners for that demolition and removal, and then consider the addition of the garage. I have nothing against the garage. It's just one more crappy building on a property that's cost me a lot of money, and every morning when I raise my shades and I look out, you see what I see. Every night when I close my shades, I look out and I see that same thing for a quarter of a century. Frankly, I'm sick of it. Please, please, enforce your regulations against these people. Because if I had to put money on it and guess, they may build a garage that they say looks like that, but I'll bet you a lot of money won't be in variance.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on this issue? Mr. Aigner? Welcome again.
Again, my name is Ed Eigner. I reside at 21221 Everton Avenue North. I am 3 properties to the west of the applicant's property. I don't want to rehash everything that's been said, other than to say everything that has been said is absolutely true. As far as the temporary shed, the one that's canvas, that started all the issues as far as removal, I too was in the same situation when some previous council passed an ordinance against having temporary structures. I was not on the council at the time, I was just a resident. I stored my boat in a temporary structure over the winter, just a tent type like you buy at Menards. I received a citation saying that they passed a new ordinance, you cannot have a temporary structure. I fully intended, as soon as the boat was removed, to be put back in the water, that I would take that structure down because I didn't want it there. I was just using it for winter storage. And I indeed did take the structure down and became in compliance. That wasn't too long after that. I was walking the dog, and the homeowner was out, and they still had the temporary structure. So I questioned her. I said, "Didn't you receive a letter that you have to take that down?" She says, "Yeah." I said, "Well, what's happening?" She says, "I threw it away. Didn't care." And then that structure's still there today. It's one of the bones of contentions. That's how much they care about complying. There's been a lot of work done on that cottage. And to be frank, they've made a lot of improvements. They've sided it. I believe they've roofed it. They put some new windows in, added a deck. I don't believe you'll find a permit for any of it. We don't believe in permits. I don't believe that they should be denied a garage or a variance for a garage. But that variance should never have passed because it was presented, I think, erroneously to the Planning Commission. And there's 2 parts to that. Number 1, there were no architectural drawings. There's no construction drawings as to what type of garage they're really going to put up. Is it going to be a 2-story garage with a residence above? Could be apartment? I don't know. There's no drawings. They should have never passed a variance without knowing what you're passing it on. And then the biggest bone of contention is the temporary structure that Mr. Donovan says is a legal non-compliant structure. I've pulled up the state of Minnesota statutes, and in the last meeting, her son, who resided there, is the one that reconstructed what formerly she claims was 2 sheds, and she's right, there were 2 sheds there with a space in the middle. He wrapped the 2 sheds, made it 1 shed. It's a very nice looking shed, as you can see on the picture. But according to what I read in Minnesota statutes, once you expand that property, the shed, you forego your grandfathered rights. And it could have been done legally had they applied for a permit or another variance to expand that shed, and the city said, okay. They didn't do that. And I don't know who mentioned before, when that work was done, Donovan said nothing was done about the shed being worked on. That's not true. There's a letter in the packet that I had received for the first meeting with a cease and desist order placed on that property. They didn't cease and desist, they finished the shed. And I'm sure they threw that letter away just like they threw the other letter away. Pardon?
Conversation here, please.
But anyways, the bone of real contention for me is not whether or not they should have a garage. They should have a garage that has building plans so the council can make a legitimate decision on what that's going to look like and whether it's going to impact the property across the street, my property, the neighbor's property. We have big investments there. We're not being unreasonable. But past history has shown that it will be anything but a garage. That'll be used for a garage. And I still think the legal thing is the expansion rules out the grandfathering. If you rule out the grandfathering, then they have no recourse but to bring that thing into compliance And compliance is to move the shed or to a legally compliant spot, which they could do. Once they take away the temporary structure, there's plenty of room to move the shed. They do not want to do any of this. So with that, I guess that's all I have to say. There is one more point. The Planning Commission did make, the chair of the Planning Commission did make the statement, which I think it affected the decision, that it was not in the purview of the Planning Commission to base their decision on the shed or non-compliance issues. From what I read in the state statutes, it's perfectly within the rights of a city to do so. And that's the only way you can bring properties into compliance. If you took that leverage away from a city, you've got plenty of examples of it. You've got the smoke shop. If they don't comply to what their license is, you take their license. There was a passage of a property on the lake on the east side. He's building a new house. He needed a variance because his house is going to be bigger than the lot would allow him to comply. They put restrictions on, you can do that, we'll pass the variance, but you have to remove the existing house, the lumber from that house, the existing garage. They can get all kinds of things the city has to do before he can get a permit. So I think it's well within your right to expect this landowner to do the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on this issue? Please. Welcome. If I can have you state your name and address for the record.
My name is Stephen Barthold, and I live at 21183 Everton Avenue North. I am the son of the mother that owns the property. First of all, my criminal background from my past has nothing to do with a variance for this garage, okay? It's no, and I'm not embarrassed. I'm embarrassed about it, but I'm not embarrassed about what I'm doing now, okay? For 2 years, I've been in treatment at Teen Challenge. I work for Teen Challenge. I mean, I can bring you letters there how much I've changed my life and things I'm doing to pay back to the community for things that I've did with my life, and I have. But it has nothing to do with the variance that we're applying for that garage. Since I've been on that property, I've changed that property a lot. Yes, when I was in prison and gone, there was a lot of things there that happened that were beyond my control. My poor mother, you know, she did what she could to keep it in order. From the original plans from the garage, I've dropped the garage down to the same pitch as the house, the same height as the house, attached the garage, everything to be in compliance with what the city, what they were asking us to do from the first meeting, and then we went to the second one. I've done everything that we want. All the sheds are coming out of there except the wooden shed that was remodeled and made nice to, you know, for the neighborhood and everything, for the property. The tent shed stores a lot of the materials to build the garage. That is, I understand all that, and that'd be part of the permit, that all has to come out of there when we build the garage. It has nothing to do with the variance. I understand why my neighbors are upset from the past experiences at the house. I totally understand that. But I'm telling this council that has nothing to do with what is going to happen now. And I'm telling you, if there's a permit and a variance pulled for that garage, that's what's going to get built there. It ain't going to be an apartment above the garage.
Conversation focused.
It's not going to be an apartment above the garage. It's going to be a garage to park 2 cars in, and that's it. The house is a 1,200-foot square house. There's no room in there. You know what I mean? I am handicapped, and that's part of the reason why I'm working at Teen Challenge, making minimum amount of money. That, and I'm paying back to God for what God has done in my life. And if this council wants letters, I'll bring you letters from down there telling you how much I've changed, and show my neighbors that too. I'm just upset about what they're insinuating and saying. And the lady that lives across the street really doesn't have Lakeview property. She lives across the street with a 5-foot easement. And the easement, the neighbors already drains into, it's part of the neighbor's property, has nothing to do with my property. And when I build a garage, it'll have proper drainage and all that stuff. I've done construction all my life. My uncle owns a construction business. It would be done right. And I'm telling this council that was part of why they upholded the variance and stuff, because it has nothing to do with what these people are trying to say. You know, it's a variance. I can understand the permit, hey, you gotta get rid of this, you gotta do that, that's fine. But this is for a variance, so I can build my garage so far from the road, and I have no choice to do that anyways, because my house isn't even 50 feet from the road. You know what I mean? And you know, that's where I'm at. And I'm being honest with this council about, it upset me, because some of them were lies that they were saying about that shed and all that stuff. It wasn't. It was beautified to make it look better, you know? And there were some other things said in there, and I'm sorry I spoke up out there, and God forgive me, but that's, you know, kind of upset me, because there was some lies said there. And as far as the tent shed goes, I put that thing up in 2003. My mom got a letter in the mail in 2005. I was in jail, okay? She talked to the city council guy, whoever it was that was like Donovan back then, and they said it was grandfathered in, okay? Never got another ticket, nothing ever said about it all these years until 2016. So when they're saying that we ignored that letter, that's not true. That is not true at all, okay? And all these years, why weren't there other citations sent and stuff if that was an issue? And there never was until 2016. And my mother, I was in process of doing what I've been doing, has been in compliance with my son's helping her, taking the cars off the property, cleaning up the property, and all that other stuff. You know, and I feel bad about that, but I couldn't do nothing because I wasn't available to help her. You know, but that right there was not true statement there, because why wasn't there other tickets sent in the mail? And there was never a police officer never came and said cease and disorder on remodeling that shed. That never happened, and there was never nothing thrown away in the mail. And that's where I got upset about, because that is not true statements. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, please. Welcome.
My name's Judy Barthold. I own the property, and I reside at 11931 Goldenrod Circle in Coon Rapids. And the biggest contention has always been that pole shed, all right? I bought the property in 1998. I've lived there, the other people have lived there 5 years, lady across the street, 5 years, and the doc, the one right here, he's lived there longer than me. So I've had it for 20 years. And I don't blame him for looking over at that tent shed. I've been wanting it gone for a long time. But I bought the property in '98. My son said he put that up in 2003, but I have pictures that shows that it was up sooner than that. And I talked to Mr. Buffington at the time. He had Donovan's job. And it was in 2004, they changed the rulings on those tent sheds where you could put them up and then take them down. Okay, well, this shed was before that. And Aaron Buffington said, you're right, it's grandfathered in. Don't worry about it, you don't have to take it down. Because if it would have, you can look at my record, I'm a law-abiding citizen. You know, my score for your finances is 850. I'm a responsible person. Somebody tells me to do something, I'm going to do it. And he told me it was grandfathered in. I never thought anything more of it. But I don't like the tent shed either. And so when Donovan and I got talking, and I told him I really wanted to put a garage on there. But my son, I've been taking care of him, and he's disabled. Nobody else is going to take care of him. So I used to work 70 hours a week. I've been retired now for 15 years. But I work 70 hours a week to pay my house and that property, and take care of him. So the state didn't have to take care of him. He's had a lot of problems in his life, and there's no doubt about that, and I don't blame anybody for not wanting to put up with any of it, but he has straightened out his life. He actually goes around he's going to the government, down to Minnesota's state government next week to talk to Congress. He talks to people for Teen Challenge. He's a personal friend of Pastor Rich that started Teen Challenge. He's actually his mentor, and that's why he's doing so well. But he goes around and he gets money, to support Teen Challenge. And now he's going down to talk to some senators next week. So he's turned his life around. Yeah, he's been bad, but he's got a lot of medical issues. You know, he got MRSA from Wyoming Hospital, and if it wasn't, in 2 days, it wasn't for University of Minnesota, he'd been dead. You know, they gave it to him. But the kind of person he is, yeah, he could have gone and sued them and got a big lawsuit because they gave him MRSA and almost killed him. But he doesn't do it because he doesn't run that way, you know. But all we want to do is get a variance to put up a garage, you know. And it's like Donovan said, in 2015, it said you don't have to have a permit, you know, to improve your structures, right? All he was trying to do is make the property look better. And none of the neighbors can say that I don't keep that property clean and up, because I'm 75 years old and I'm out there all the time, and I've got my own house to take care of. My husband's 86 years old and I have to take care of it. He's got dementia and I have to take care of all of it, you know. But, you know, like my one neighbor across the street's complaining about all the stuff. Her husband is down there stealing my rocks off of my shore all the time. They're out there, they have parties all the time on the weekends, and then they're on the holidays and that. I found all kinds of flares up on the top of my roof when I'm up there cleaning them off, you know. I mean, my neighbor next door moved because they're having parties all the time. So there's nobody that you can say isn't at fault around here. And I don't blame the neighbors for what happened in the past, not at all. I'm trying to improve the property. I can't afford to buy another place for him to live, nor should I. I've been there 20 years. They've been there 5. They don't like the neighborhood. Let them move.
Thank you.
You know?
Thank you. Anybody else to speak on this topic? With that, I will close the public hearing and bring the conversation back to council. Council, any questions of staff before I entertain a motion?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, would it be out of line if we asked Mr. Langness to weigh in on this? Eric, would you be interested in saying a couple words about this, being that you serve on the Planning Commission? Would that be okay?
I'm open to that.
I'm happy.
Welcome.
I'm happy to answer any questions council members have. I think the one question I had heard that I might be able to confirm is that the Planning Commission did, in fact, at the very first meeting, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, Donovan, it was unanimous that we guided staff to find a way to remove the shed closest to the road. And until staff report came back, that was when the opinions changed. And the question was more of a legal concern than it was an intent or a desire. Was there other questions council had?
Did you explore moving the garage over? I guess it would be off to the east. More easterly?
There was conversation. So the direction that we gave was to, I'm kind of going off my head here, so forgive me if I have exact details wrong, but it was to either push the garage from the original proposal that was very close to the road towards the house, attaching it to the house, or changing its direction, or moving it over to the other side. We were in broad agreement, I would say, on the various applications, but we wanted it pushed away from the road. That was the biggest, is to minimize the amount of variance that was requested. I personally didn't have an opinion that was strong one way or the other. My preference for the garage was where they put it, attached to the house, because it minimized it the least. Ideally, I suppose they could have turned the directions of the doors to push to the road that way, increasing that distance as well, but it wasn't imperative. That wasn't the reason I voted no. And but I believe the applicant did state that there was a large tree that was extremely expensive to remove, as well as valuable to the property from their viewpoint, which is why they oriented the garage where it is.
Any further questions of Mr. Langness?
No, I was just trying to get some insight, because, you know, you look at the variance request with a 20-foot back set there, it's not even enough room to park a car, you know what I mean? And so And of course, you're always looking for some sort of hardship in these variances. And first of all, I want to say I like garages, believe me. I think they're worth their weight in gold. But at the same time, that shed and of course the concerns of the neighbors with this pole thing or whatever it is there is a bit of a concern too, and it's an opportunity to get things straightened out there and get you more into compliance. I'm not telling Eric that, it's my opinion here with the council. So I'd like to hear more comments about that.
Thank you, Mr. Langness.
Was there ever conversation about insisting the property be brought up to compliance as a condition of granting of the variance? And I'm not sure that this can be done, but I'm just asking the question, that the property be brought into compliance before the variance is issued?
Mayor, members of the council, if I can speak just a little bit on some of the comments there, including sort of the issue of this non-conforming status of one or more of the sheds, apparently. So before you tonight is an appeal of a grant of a variance and the conditions imposed on that variance. When the Planning Commission grants a variance, they are, by law, both under the city code and the state statute, authorized to impose conditions in conjunction with the grant of that variance. And the conditions are required to meet two separate tests. First, they must be directly related to, and secondly, bear a rough proportionality to the impact created by the variance. So it is certainly possible in most situations, in this case it being a front yard setback variance, to try and address any other situations, for example, to remedy or decrease any potential setback issues in that front yard area. And I think that's where Planning Commission may have been looking with respect to the sheds. So there were a number of conditions that were imposed with the grant of the variance, and there were some conditions that weren't imposed that could have been imposed. And whether or not to impose a condition is a discretionary act. It's something that the statute says may be done. So it's up to Planning Commission in its discretion to impose any conditions at all. It's up to council now hearing this appeal in your discretion to maintain those same conditions or to potentially add some additional conditions. One of the conditions that the Planning Commission could have required would have been to require the removal of all illegal non-conforming structures on the property. My understanding is that the two structures that were identified that met that criteria were the metal shed and the canvas and pole structure. And there may have been some additional information provided on that tonight that is outside of my understanding of the facts. Additionally, there's been discussion related to what I've deemed the wooden shed. So the wooden shed is the structure that's located within that front yard setback area, and you saw it on a number of photos. Now, the council or the Planning Commission could require the removal of any illegal expansion of a non-conforming use. So to the extent that the wooden shed has been expanded, that expansion could be required to be removed. While it's true that state statutes allow the council or the Planning Commission to require the removal of a legally established non-conforming use, that is only if the request for approval specifically is for the construction of a building or structure that cannot be built without physically removing that legally established non-conforming use. So it is true that statute says you can require a non-conformity be removed in conjunction with a permit, a variance, etc. But that's only if you have to remove it in order to grant whatever permit or approval is being sought. And my understanding is that that is not the case here. And under state statutes, with respect to non-conforming uses are allowed to continue in the same manner, shape, or form. They're allowed to be maintained and repaired, but not expanded. And moreover, there is a statute that was cited in my memo that says that a city is not allowed to require the removal of a legally established non-conforming use as a condition or prerequisite for the issuance of a permit or license or other approval. So that's where I think there's been some confusion here. And quite frankly, I think there's been sort of information developing as the process plays out with respect to when was the structure created, when was it expanded, what does that expansion look like. So that's sort of a background on this issue of conditions and nonconformities, and I'd be happy to answer any more specific questions the council may have on that matter.
So
So I just have a quick question just to clarify everything that you said. So the only thing that could be done is whatever was added to that wooden shed as an expansion could be asked to be removed. But the actual wood, there's a lot of structures we're talking about here. The wooden shed, because it's illegally non-conforming, that cannot be just the expansion.
Mayor, members of the council, assuming that in fact the wooden shed is a legally established non-conforming use, and I think there's been some question with regard to that, but assuming that that is the case, then the answer is yes, because it is not a requirement for whatever the permit is for the construction of the new garage, that be removed. In other words, you can construct the garage without removing that legally established non-conforming use, if that's what it is. Then what could be done, and the maximum the council can do, the maximum the city can do without exposing itself to an inverse condemnation claim potentially, is to require that the expansion of that structure be removed.
Is that, the canvas and pole building was never a legal building?
It's my opinion, yes, that we had the enforcement letter from 2005, and then my perspective is that it needs to be removed. And that's the subject of the, ongoing
Right.
series of hearings, and the next one being February 5th regarding this.
So the question I have for the Legal Eagles and everybody else is, can we require to have that removed before the permit is issued?
That was a condition of the planning commission approval, was that
But it sounds like nothing's happening all the time, so how can we put some teeth in it, I guess?
Well, basically, the plan commission language said that a demo permit must be obtained before a building permit's issued. Part of a demo permit is basically an escrow is deposited with the city, and if the thing that's subject of the demo permit is not removed, then the city has the ability to use those funds to remove the structure, in this case, remove the canvas and pole structure.
So, so that could get removed.
So
Yeah,
can
and I
I
think it should.
just repeat, make sure I understand what I think I heard? So should that structure not be removed, we do have the ability at a future time to remove that structure, given what is in place today. Is that a true statement?
Correct. I believe there's two methods. One is simply the planning commission condition of approval. The other method is just not withdrawing the criminal citation because the property is not in compliance. So there's basically two pathways for remove for that canvas and pole structure.
Thank you.
Your Honor, to that point, one of the conditions which was approved by the Planning Commission is that a demolition permit must be obtained prior to building permit issuance. In theory, that could be amended to, for example, require removal of the metal shedding, canvas, and pole structure prior to obtaining building permit for that garage. I understand it might be sheltering the garage materials, so I'm not sure how practical that is, but should the council be looking for some more teeth, that's also an option, assuming that those are not legally established non-conforming structures.
That's the option I would use.
Council members, that is option, or that is the condition number 2 on page 101 of our packet.
Okay, let's,
At risk of repeating myself, I think one of the things that stood out for me in reviewing this is this history of noncompliance since at least 2005, if maybe not before. So the idea of requiring removal of those structures prior to issuing that building permit seems reasonable to me.
Sounds like, perhaps we're at a time, before we get into conclusion or making a motion, any further clarifying questions around the fact pattern, appropriate law? We are closed to public comment at this time.
I was just going to add just a comment. I feel like with this one, I believe there's kind of two different issues here. There's the variance appeal, and there's also the neighbors' frustration with code enforcement, which I understand is very frustrating, and the fact that this has gone on for many years and that lack of trust that has built with your neighbor. But I also see where the garage and coming into compliance with the garage, or having the garage, is a way to move in that forward direction. But I would also echo what you just said, Kathy, is that I feel like we need something more to help that lack of distrust with the neighbors before. So I just wanted to make that comment.
I will entertain a motion.
Just a point of clarification, if we are making a motion to overturn the planning commission's decision, or how are we framing this if we're
Yeah.
wanting to put that added?
Well, but my way I understand it, you're using one resolution or the other. The resolution numbers, you know?
Right. Right, but if we want to add that additional condition,
Thank you. If I
Go
may,
ahead,
Your Honor,
please.
members of the council, there are two resolutions that were prepared for your consideration this evening. They provide an outline, but are subject to council revision at your discretion. Resolution 1-28-191A essentially upholds the grant of the variance, finds that the Planning Commission did correctly apply the legal standard, that there were in fact practical difficulties that justified the grant of the variance, and upholds the conditions as imposed by Planning Commission as roughly proportionate and directly related to the variance requested. Should the council wish to uphold the variance with the conditions, with the modification of one condition, that resolution could be adopted, and 3 could be added with an amendment to add that condition to be modified to, for example, require that those two structures be removed prior to issuance of a building permit for the garage. So that would be the pathway if that is council's desire. The second resolution, ending in 1B, is a resolution overturning the decision of the Planning Commission, finding that there were not in fact practical difficulties established by the applicant, that the decision of the Planning Commission was arbitrary and capricious, and/or that the conditions did not bear a rough proportionality to the variance request. So those are the two kind of structures of those two resolutions for council consideration.
Do we have a motion?
I'm not sure how to word it. I think some other things could have been done with the garage, but I do like garages, but at the same time, I understand the neighbors' concerns, with these sheds and things, and the planning commission really did spell it out quite well. The only difference I would make in it is the fact that this stuff takes place before the permit is issued for the garage. They could have a separate permit for the demolition to make sure it happens, because apparently there's an issue with, we're gonna do it, and it doesn't happen. So I'd base my motion on, we'd adopt resolution 1-28-19-1A, stating the planning commission's concerns and recommendations, but to add in that the demolition permit would be issued first, and that those two items would be removed, would be the canvas pole shed and the metal building. I don't know if that's worded adequately or not.
As I hear the motion, it is to approve the variance with the conditions as granted with a modification to condition number 2, which would require that a demolition permit to remove the metal shed and canvas pole structure must be issued, and both structures must be removed prior to building permit issuance for the garage.
You said it way better than I did. But that's exactly that's my motion.
We have
Yes.
a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion on this item?
I just have one more question about this wood shed. It's just kind of hanging here. You, Donovan, said you had 1994. There was evidence that this was two separate sheds. Do we have no record of permitting?
We do not. It was 1994, this was a town, in a town jurisdiction, and there are many building permits we don't have, from that era, in that location.
Okay, that's unfortunate.
Just for purposes of discussion, I appreciate everyone being here tonight and appreciate the opportunity to hear both sides. We're not going to fix 20 years of conflict tonight. I do appreciate Mr. Bothold being here and taking accountability for the property. I think granting this variance or upholding the decision of the Planning Commission moves the overall property along towards overall compliance, recognizing we do still have some code enforcement challenges. I ask for the property owner's cooperation in resolving those challenges, but I also appreciate that legally, I believe that these are two different paths as our city attorney has walked us through. So I am supportive of the resolution as proposed and on the table. So I think it doesn't resolve all conflicts, but it moves us positively down the path. So any other discussion items? With that, I will call the vote. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Okay, council, next up on, I have lost my agenda. Next up on the agenda, Cloud X Vape tobacco license application. This has been tabled from our January 14th meeting. Bailey, you're going to start with an update on that?
Yes, Mayor and council members, as you mentioned, the Cloud X Vapes tobacco license for applicant Courtney James has been tabled from the January 14, 2019 council meeting. As mentioned at the last meeting, the Forest Lake Police Department, along with staff, have concluded in the application investigation process that have found nothing to eliminate the issuance of the tobacco license to Courtney James and Lashes by Courtney LLC, DBA Cloud X Vapes. I believe the applicant is here to speak. In addition, I did include all materials the applicant had sent to me per council's request at the January 14th meeting.
Thank you, Bailey.
Do we need a motion to reopen this, or?
No, the hearing was
Okay,
closed,
okay.
so.
I just want to be clear. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey. The applicant is here, I believe. Would you like to make any comments to council before we start conversation?
I was just wondering if any of you have questions for me?
Why don't you come to the podium, please? Was that did you have a statement you wanted to make before we started
Well,
consideration?
first, I was just wondering if any of you had any extra questions for me besides of everything I already sent in.
Any questions for the applicant before we consider the question, the license? I appreciate the information you did send. Okay. Any questions at this time?
I have a question for you in regards to, and thank you for the information that you sent in. It's very helpful. But I have questions in regards to the management structure moving forward. From what I've read, and so correct me if I'm wrong, that the management structure is staying the same.
The management, so I will be owning it, and then I'm keeping Cole Nye as the manager there because he's had no problems with anything, and so I'm keeping him there to kind of help me along with it since I'm going to be new, so.
But he was the one in charge before for when the other citations happened, correct?
Yes.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. I will entertain a motion to open discussion.
This has been a kind of an issue, with us for several months, and now we have a different owner or but there still seems to be some connections there, and I'm a little concerned about that. But at the same time, other than that, it's a completely newly legal entity, so I guess they're starting on fresh here, and I don't know what else to say about it, really.
I guess I would, just to bring it up again, starting up fresh as a new license holder, but I feel like not starting up fresh in terms of management. The same person's going to be in charge that was in charge before, and I had a number of folks from the school district contact me, teachers in the school district, and talk to me about the issue that this is in our community. And at what point they were asking, when we say in our community that we love our schools, are we also helping to protect the public health of our children in our schools? And so with that, I realize it is a new license holder, but I just have extreme concerns about the management structure. And I had noticed as well, Mr. Langness had pointed out earlier about the different, I guess, repercussions in terms of, selling to minors. And if it's with management, you get 4 chances, but if the police catch you, you get 2. And I have a problem with that. If you're breaking the law, you're breaking the law.
Yeah, a legal business can't be conducting illegal business. And I too have concerns about these relationships. I know the previous owner and license holder was Diane Hughes, grandmother of William Shasinski, correct? William also owns Cloud X Vape stores in North Branch, Minnetonka, and Waconia. And although not directly on paper tied to this store, there is certainly an indirect relationship with the new owner and license application. What is, Courtney, what is your relationship to William?
He's my boyfriend.
Okay. And Forest Lake manager Cole Nye also manages the North Branch store, which is, as mentioned in our paperwork, owned by William Shasinski. So I don't see a lot of change here. I've grave concerns. I have grave concerns about granting this license. So with that, I move to deny the Cloud X vape license.
I second.
Further discussion on your denial, are you referring to the resolution to deny?
Yes.
Resolution 01281901. It should be 02, I'm sorry. 1902. Thank you. Discussion on this item, I will echo some of the previous comments made. This particular business name operating in this location with this management team has a history of using license structure to avoid compliance challenges. Originally, when this business was opening, there was an original license request that staff evaluated for William Shasinski. That was pulled, and as Councilmember Byström pointed out, that license was granted to Mrs. Hughes, who is his grandmother. There was a request, I'm just filling in a little bit of the blanks here. There was a request then to transfer that license to William Hughes that was denied by previous council. And then prior to council revoking the license, there was a request, or the paperwork had come in for this existing application, which tells me that this is a transfer that is not at an arm's length. And then the fact that it's not at an arm's length is also reinforced by the fact that there is an existing relationship. What I wanted to see when we asked last time for a training plan and a management plan is I wanted to see an aggressive training plan, and I wanted to see a new management team. And the fact that we have the same manager proposed for the new license that was not successful enforcing under the old license, it is the tone at the top that sets whether code or license enforcement or the laws are going to be enforced. It is that tone at the top, and that individual being the same is greatly concerning to me, as well as the overall organization structure still has the same management team that has had challenges. So I feel like this is the applicant and the business overall is using this license structure to avert the law. And if we are serious about not having youth with this access to this product in our community, we don't need to change any laws. We just need council to do what we have the ability to do, which is to give discretion. And when the pieces don't line up, we don't have to grant a license. And so for that, I will also support the denial this evening. Further discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we were looking at the legal aspects of the structure, even though I agree with you, things haven't changed much as far as the management is concerned, that's for sure. And I was the one that, advocated the second chance, and so things happen. And as far as carding people, just to make a comment about it, is card everybody that walks in the place. If Alvin walks by, card him,
I've been carded.
Yeah, card everybody. Don't, this business of not carding anybody that's over 27, how do you know that? So anyways,
Right.
there's a motion on the table, so you guys,
Any other further discussion on this item? With that, the motion on the table is to deny. I will ask for a vote. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.
Never made a mistake.
Council, our final item on the agenda this evening is commission and committee appointments. On this, it is page 199 in your packet. Before you has my recommended appointments to commissions of the City of Forest Lake. A couple of notes of comment. Tonight, we are filling 2 positions for the Airport Commission, 2 positions for the EDA, 2 positions for Parks, Lakes, and Trails, and 3 positions for the Planning Commission. Your packet includes whether or not those are returning members or new members. We will have, after this evening, if all of these positions are approved, we will still have 1 open position on Parks, Lakes, and Trails. We have a number of applications in where people have applied for multiple positions, and so I'd like the opportunity to circle back once we get these approvals in to appropriately fill that final seat on Parks, Lakes, and Trails. And then I had, when we did council liaison appointments 2 weeks ago, I held open I took the liaison position for the Human Rights Commission. There are a number of open positions on the Human Rights Commission, and I would like to reevaluate that commission, scope of work, charter, and then we will fill that commission as appropriate. So both the Parks, Lakes, and Trails position as well as the Human Rights Commission will come before you at a future time. With that, I am happy to take any questions
Are you ready for a motion?
or entertain a motion. Absolutely.
I'd like to make a motion to do these in 2 separate votes, so I don't have to vote for Kurt Munson.
Appropriate. I will is that a motion for everybody but Kurt?
Yes.
Okay, so moved. I would accept the list that you have there, except for Curtis for a separate issue.
And a second? Or
That's my motion.
motion, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries.
I'd make a motion that we appoint Curtis Munson for the new member to the Airport Commission.
I'll second.
All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
Abstain.
Thank you.
Has he got an airplane?
Pilot.
No?
All right.
Mayor Bain and members of the council, I would like, as we're kind of talking about commission appointments here, I would like an opportunity to, at a future work session, discuss the police commission, and at some point, potentially bringing that back, but I would like to add that to a work session.
Future work session.
Agenda at some point.
Noted.
Yep, and then I also would like to kind of understand, we've got Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, but what is the difference between a commission in that regard and a board? Because I know a lot of communities actually have park boards, and I don't know if it's just language or if there's a differentiation there. So I'd like an opportunity to talk about that as well.
There is a history there, and we can certainly have that conversation. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. With that, we have finished our action item portion of the agenda, and we are ready for staff updates. Dan, anything for us this evening?
Just a mention that this Friday, February 1st, the building department's hosting the first contractor breakfast. These kind of came out of some conversations last summer where some of the contractors were just having some questions on some of the permitting requirements that were within the city of Forest Lake. So there was a discussion that was had. They basically had these contractor breakfasts with the contractor come in, get some continuing education credits, and then kind of focus those conversations on some of the issues that we were seeing on the compliance side. This topic this fall is wall bracing on Friday, so this will be the first contractor breakfast that the city will be hosting for contractors within the city of Forest Lake.
Terrific. Thank you for hosting those. Donovan?
No step update for me at this moment.
Thank you. Chief Peterson?
The only item I have for you tonight is because of the extreme cold the next few days, Forest Lake area schools they have canceled school for the next 2 days. And from all of us in public safety and public works, just want to make sure that everyone is very careful driving the next couple of days and being outside. It only takes a few minutes and you can get frostbite. And be very careful of the roads because they're going to be very dangerous. Black ice is going to form very quickly with the cold. So that's the only update I have for you.
Thank you. Bailey?
Just what I've been working on the past couple months, all business licenses, including liquor licenses, are all renewed for 2019 as of today.
Excellent. Nice work. Thank you.
I have no report.
Thank you. Bridget?
Thank you, I don't know update.
Very good.
Mayor, City Council, I'll just give you a heads up. You should expect on the next City Council meeting, resolution letters of support for the LRIP grant that we're seeking to buy down local share on the roundabout project at Goodview in 97. So just give you a heads up, and 19 days till a pull or plunge if you haven't signed up.
We have had,
Susan made you say that, didn't she?
I didn't. In fact, I forgot to sign up on the form.
Dave?
No updated city.
Thank you. Chief Newman? No updates. Perfect. Thank you. And I think that's everyone. Sam?
Okay, yep. I attended the school board meeting, which took place last Thursday evening, and it was kind of it was a community input on the spending priorities. So there was a very, very long discussion, and you know, how they can get the best bang for their buck, and trying to figure out what the priorities are and that sort of thing. So I don't have every single one of them, but that was a 2.5 hour discussion. So they're doing their best to get the best out of what they can with their funding coming up. And there's going to be some next steps coming up here. They haven't picked on any dates yet, so I'll keep everybody informed.
Thank you. Councilmember Munson?
So the Planning Commission meeting was canceled, so did not attend that. And then I would just like to speak in regards to the Polar Plunge. I had a wonderful coffee this weekend with someone who recruited me for a city council team. You are welcome to plunge with me. I will plunge. And that just want to talk to all of you about our charity being the Forest Lake Athletic Association as sort of my commitment to joining their board. So I'm going to do it. And if you know me, this is not something that I do, and I don't like the cold, but I will do it for this and for my city. So anybody want to join me in plunge?
Yep.
Or pledge?
Or pledge?
Yeah, that would be, my choice would be to pledge, not to plunge, so.
So Kathy Bystrom's going on record saying she's pledging.
On the
As
record,
pledged.
yes, absolutely.
All successful events need pledgers and plungers, and I am happy to be a cheer bystander and a pledger, but.
We're not going to let you plunge, by the way.
Right, well, thank you.
Sam?
You're asking me to jump in the
You
cold
want to
water?
jump in the cold water?
Or write a check.
I got to tell you a little story. I did that the day after ice out in a canoe in
On purpose?
So right, yeah, no. And we spent the rest of the night drying things out. Luckily, we were able to get a fire going. I don't really like doing that, but I probably have to. But
You can pledge, too.
we can pledge. Well, I'll keep it.
You keep it in mind? Okay.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Byström?
I attended the 4th of July lasagna dinner, fundraiser lasagna dinner at the Legion, and I really wish there was some way we could get the community to understand how much better that event could be if we would just support those kinds of fundraisers. So just on the record. first Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission meeting tomorrow, so I'm excited about that. And I just wanted to thank Ryan Goodman and Bridget, our Attorney Nason, for a couple of great informational meetings.
Yes, I'll diddle that.
Yeah, ready for everything now, right, Ryan?
Very good. Thank you. I missed the fundraiser dinner on Saturday evening, but thank you for going and thank you for the pitch. It is important that if we all love this 4th of July event, and if it's going to be successful, it takes all of us, and so thank you for that. I want to congratulate Forest Lake Hoops Association on a fantastic tournament over Saturday and Sunday. They hosted like 174 teams and over 200 games of basketball. I had an opportunity to tour and see the tournament in action, and so just thank you to everybody and all of the great, they do a nice taste of Forest Lake at the concession stand with some Keys soup and some pasta and meatballs from Vanelli's, and so it's a nice highlight of the community, and it brings in a lot of people. That parking lot was full all weekend long, so thank you for that and congratulations. Just quick update for anybody who wasn't as part of the EDA workshop that was just held. There was a joint EDA and council workshop at 5:30 today where we talked about the preliminary plans for the Hoole property. It was a workshop. There was no action to be taken, nor any action expected. There are some study next steps that need to be considered, and I would expect that project team and staff to work together to kind of evaluate what are next best steps for that important project. And then also, just quick heads up, I'm attending the elected officials conference for the League of Minnesota Cities Friday and Saturday. I believe we have a couple of other Forest Lake members also attending that. It's always a good educational opportunity and good opportunity to network with those in our region working on a lot of the same issues we are. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. And we're adjourned.